Finally, after 3 years' work and an expenditure of $2 billion, the atomic experts were ready to test their first bomb.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1,
In the summer of 1945, the Manhattan Project achieves its aim.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
In 1945, when the United States launched the Manhattan Project, it ended World War II and crowned America into a superpower.
On the 12th of August 1945, the long-awaited news hits the headlines.
I have received this afternoon a message from the Japanese government, a full acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration, which specifies the unconditional surrender of Japan.
But right now, as we speak, another Manhattan Project is underway. But this time, it is happening in China with no hype, no noise, and no explosions. But this time, it's not a bomb, it's not a missile, it's a computing stack.
We are in a tech race right now with China.
China is working aggressively at AI. This is Manhattan Project 2.
Chinese scientists have created a super-fast analog chip
to power AI, smartphones, and modern weapons.
The release of Deepseek AI from a Chinese company should be a wake-up call for our industries.
And just like the first Manhattan Project, this one was born out of a war. In October 2022, the United States of America launched a lethal attack on China. This caused such a massive shock in the Chinese market that the Chinese stocks started crashing. Some companies even lost up to 9 to 10% in value overnight. And even companies out of China lost around $240 billion in combined market value. All of this was happening without firing a single missile. The question is, how is that possible?
The Biden administration published a large set of export controls on Friday in order to slow Beijing's technological advances.
U.S. trade restrictions continuing to make an impact on semiconductor companies such as NVIDIA.
NVIDIA's CFO warning that China sales will drop significantly in the fourth quarter.
Before we move on, I would like to thank Outskill for supporting our content. People, today in this AI race, countries are heavily investing in AI. In fact, even businesses are using AI to solve their problems, which is why in this AI race, as a working professional, if you don't embrace the wave, you will fall out of the race. So if you want to become a beneficiary of this AI race, you gotta learn AI so that you can achieve super efficiency at your work and use AI to grow in your career. And the best way to embrace this would be to take up a course from Outskill. Outskill is conducting a 2-day live AI training which is happening this Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Usually, this training costs 10,000 rupees, but our partners Outskill have brought it to you for free. In this 16-hour training, you will learn how to build a personal AI toolkit with 10 plus tools, how to master prompt engineering, how to automate repetitive tasks without any coding, how to create professional presentations, images and videos, and how to develop AI agents. Professionals from 40 plus countries and over 10 million people have already attended this training. So no matter which field you are from, this free training is made for you. So to future-proof your career and to understand AI, click the link in the description and sign up for the Outskill training program. To build an AI superpower, you must pass through 3 gates. Gate 1 is the brain or EDA software. It's called the Electronic Design Automation Software. As we all know, NVIDIA H100 chips have 80 billion transistors. Now, you can't attach those transistors with a pencil. So, EDA is the special software that figures out the most optimal location for every single logic gate on that tiny piece of silicon. So, you cannot design an NVIDIA H100 without an American electronic design automation software. Now look at this. Only 3 companies in the world control 70 to 75% of this global market. Synopsys, Cadence, and Mentor Graphics. All of these companies are American-controlled companies. So you know what the US did? The US locked these tools behind cloud licenses. This meant that US companies like Synopsys and Cadence could no longer sell or provide support for that advanced software to Chinese clients without obtaining a special license from the US government. So obviously, the Chinese couldn't use EDA at all. That is how US blocked Gate 1. Then Gate 2 is the hand. Here's where you need to understand the ASML monopoly. Once the chip is designed, you must print the chip. This requires the most complex machine in human history called the ASML lithography tool. This tool is as big as a bus. It costs $200 to $350 million, and it is the only machine in the world capable of printing at the 3 nanometer scale. You know how much is 3 nanometer? The typical diameter of a single coronavirus particle is about 80 to 120 nanometers. So 3 nanometers is 40 times smaller than a single coronavirus. Now, problem here was that the ASML is a Netherlands company. So the question is, how did Biden stop them? Well, the US government told the Dutch company that, listen brother, you cannot sell this machine to China. But ASML was like, Uncle Sam, you cannot control me. I am not an American company. So the Biden government found out that ASML uses one critical American-made product called the Cymer light source, which is designed in California. So America was like, listen brother, you built ASML, we built Cymer light source, and ASML cannot be built without the Cymer light source. So ASML technically cannot be made without America. So you are under American control. That is why we from today ban you from selling to China. Now the poor Dutch company had no way but to listen to America. So China lost access to Gate 2, which was the construction machine. Then they blocked Gate 3, which is the AI hardware or NVIDIA chips. As we all know, in October 2022 and 2023, the US set performance density threshold, which essentially meant any chip fast enough to run a nuclear simulation became illegal to sell to Beijing. On paper, the strategy was absolutely perfect. By blocking all 3 gates, China had no way to win the AI race. They didn't have the chips, they didn't have the manufacturing capability, and they didn't have the software to produce them. So everybody thought China was choked and US would go on to win the AI race in the world. But you know what? Washington made one very, very big mistake. And this one mistake gave China a superpower so strong that it could single-handedly destroy America's dominance in the world. So the question is, what was this mistake that America made? Well, America treated China like a market economy. They thought Chinese companies cared about quarterly profits. Because if you see the pattern, it is pretty simple. If Chinese companies spent $1 billion in R&D, they won't make profits at all. If they don't make profits, debt won't sustain, shareholders will lose faith, and the companies will die. That's how typically an American company works, right? In fact, China does the same thing to India. They tried to sell solar modules so cheaply in India that no solar company would survive. This way, after the industry is dead, they could easily start charging 20% premium and recover their loss. This is called dumping, and it still happens in India because of China. So when the US blocked everything from hardware to software, the Chinese company should be dead, right? Well, guess what? The government of China said, we do not care whether our companies are profitable or not. We will keep funding our companies as long as we can become independent of US. The first goal is to eliminate US dependency, and then we can talk about profits. That's what the Chinese thought. So when the US cut off China from accessing the NVIDIA H100 chips, the Chinese found a clever trick. They deployed something called the mixture of experts architecture to beat ChatGPT and launch Deepseek. Sounds technical, right? But don't worry at all. I will explain it in such a way that even a 10th standard student can understand. Here's the difference that existed between the Chinese AI model and the American AI model when Deepseek launched. Imagine a giant hospital where every single doctor attends to every single patient. So in the American AI hospital, if you walk in with a bleeding knee, the receptionist will call everyone. The brain surgeon, the heart specialist, the foot doctor, the pediatrician, and 200 other doctors. They all will crowd into your room, look at your knee, and discuss this. And then, through that group discussion, they will come to a conclusion that, you know what, Ganesh needs a band-aid. Now, even though the system works, it is incredibly slow, it is extremely crowded and costs a fortune because you have to pay 250 highly paid doctors just to fix a bleeding knee. But here's how the Deepseek AI hospital works. Deepseek changed the rules of the hospitals in such a way that they still had 256 specialist doctors in the building, but they had a smart receptionist. This receptionist, in the technical term, was the router. Now, when you walked into the Chinese AI hospital, the receptionist looks at you and says, "Oh, do you have a knee problem?" Then the receptionist wakes up only the knee doctor to help you. So during this time, the other 254 doctors stay in the break room. So they don't do any work and they don't get paid for that hour at all. So do you realize the model is technically huge, but since only a tiny team works on your specific problem, it runs as fast as a small model. So in the Chinese model, you only pay for the 5% who actually worked and not the 95% who slept. In simple words, the Chinese model replaced a jack of all trades giant with a highly efficient team of specialists who only work when needed. Now in this, the American hospital is the ChatGPT model and the Chinese hospital is the Deepseek model. The doctors are the parameters and the receptionist in the Chinese model is the router. The second strategy that the Chinese deployed is the IKEA strategy. When the US banned the cables that let chips talk to each other, Deepseek invented multi-head latent attention. Now I know again this is technical, but it is actually pretty simple. If you look at how these models work, they work efficiently when the chips are continuously talking to each other. And to do this communication efficiently, they need insanely good cables. And America, as usual, banned all the cables from being exported to China. Imagine you have to move a sofa from one place to the other. Earlier, the Chinese had a big door, using which the Chinese could easily move the sofa through the door. The sofa here is the data that needs to move between chips. The door is the bandwidth of the cables, and the houses are essentially chips between which the data has to move. Now America came in and walled this door to make it smaller. They thought if we make the door smaller, the Chinese won't be able to move the data through these doors. So you know what the Chinese did? They simply compressed the sofa into an IKEA type box and then they were easily able to ship it through the door. So they basically turned the sofa or the data into a zip file and shipped the data from one chip to the other. Now, after making the software efficient, they deployed their ant colony strategy. You see, H100 chip is like a high-powered truck. It can pull heavy loads in a super efficient manner. And as compared to H100, the H20 NVIDIA chips are like scooters. They have less power and they are very, very inefficient. So let's say the job is to calculate 2000 math problems. While one H100 can do 2000 math problems per second with 700 watts of power consumption, whereas if you look at NVIDIA H20, it can only do 300 problems per second. So you will need 7 chips wired together, with each chip consuming 400 watts of power. So in total, the H20 set will consume 2800 watts of power. So if you see, the power consumption of the H20 cluster is 4 times as that of H100. As a result, cooling will also become very, very costly. So if you see, although the work is being done, the process is extremely inefficient and it is very, very costly. So you know what the Chinese did? The Chinese said, we don't care about power. America has the chips, but we have the Chinese government. If the chips burn 4x more electricity, we will just make electricity 4x cheaper. And this is where the Chinese started something called the East Data West Computing Project. Look at this. The map of China is split into 2 very different worlds. To visualize this madness on a map, you need to understand one specific imaginary line that divides China. This is the famous Hu line. If you draw a diagonal line from the northeast tip of China down to the southwest, the east side has 43% of the land but 94% of the population. Whereas the west side has 57% of the land but only 6% of the population. Here, the average population density is 330 people per square kilometer. Whereas if you look at dense urban areas, there the density will hit 6,000 to 20,000 people per square kilometer. But if you look at the west, the average density over here is only 16 people per square kilometer. And you will see vast regions where you will find only between 2 to 20 people per square kilometer. This area is so empty that you can drive for hours and see absolutely zero humans. As a result, land over here is virtually free of people, and you can cover 100,000 acres with solar panels and wind turbines. And nobody will ever complain because nobody lives over there. So you know what? Here are the crazy things that the Chinese built. Tencent dug 5 massive tunnels horizontally into a mountain and built a data center that has 50,000 servers, and that too inside a cave system that is bomb-proof. And they plan to reach up to 300,000 servers. Now you might ask, why mountains? Are they crazy? Well, they are crazy because they thought inside the mountain the temperature is naturally cool, so it will save them millions of dollars on air conditioning. So yeah, they practically dug a tunnel into a mountain because they wanted natural air conditioners. And you know what? It doesn't stop there. They also have something called the Gobi Desert project. And the Gobi Desert is practically a barren, sandy and windy region. So they installed millions of solar panels across the desert that is set to deliver 450 gigawatts of renewable power in some years. You know how much 450 gigawatts is? It's more power than Germany and Brazil combined. In fact, even if you look at India, during our peak summer season, we consume 250 gigawatts. So yeah, a Chinese desert produces more power than the peak demand of the entire country of India. That is how crazy this project is. And lastly, they built a commercial underwater data center. So they're sinking massive watertight cylinders full of servers to the bottom of the ocean so that the ocean water can naturally cool the servers with no fans, no AC, no dust and no oxygen. So they're turning deserts into solar batteries, mountains into refrigerator cases, rivers into hydro generators, and the ocean floor into liquid cooling tanks. This is the reason why the Chinese were able to produce energy effortlessly, and they were able to run that insanely inefficient stack of theirs very easily. And look at this, the Chinese government also offered a 50% discount on electricity bills for the data centers in the western provinces if they used domestic chips. So all these companies were forced to use not just Nvidia chips but also Huawei chips even if they were bad. This is how Huawei got healthy cash flows, which they then invested into research and development of new chips. And look at this. In 2023 alone, Huawei received over $1 billion in direct government grants. This was practically free money with absolutely zero interest, and it is recorded in their annual report as government grants. Then the Chinese also invested $47 billion into the semiconductor ecosystem to help companies make great chips. And the funny part is that the money went only to loss-making companies so that over time they can scale and generate a profit. And if you compare this to the US counterparts, the US government took years to give Intel $8.5 billion in loans and grants. But the Chinese government, they gave their companies free money instantly with just one condition: delete America from your supply chain. This is how China spent all its money into building a massive energy source, cutting-edge research and development, and prevented all its chip and semiconductor companies from going bankrupt. And you know what happened because of this? Because of this war, China has now built a completely independent technology ecosystem, and it is now immune to American laws.
China's tech and computing sectors are booming. China caused massive waves in the AI and tech company sector by releasing Deepseek.
Today, the world's second largest economy is putting on a worthy challenge to the US and the tech world. And you also have electric car companies like BYD that are threatening to dethrone traditional car makers. They're also the world's biggest battery maker and have an overwhelming dominance in the renewable energy supply chain.
Instead of OpenAI, they have Deepseek. Instead of Nvidia H100, they use Huawei Ascent. Instead of Windows and Linux, they use Harmony OS. And instead of just relying on coal and gas, they now use renewable energy produced from the Gobi Desert. So if you see, the US sanctions were meant to kill these Chinese companies, but instead, they acted like a vaccine. They made the Chinese sector sick for a year, but now it is immune to the American virus. And now in 2025, the US again tried selling Nvidia chips to China, thinking that they can get China addicted to American technology. But you know what? This time the Chinese said, no. We aren't letting another American virus enter our ecosystem. So now they're practically denying Nvidia chips because they have their own chips. So the moral of the story is that the US thought it was putting China in a cage, But China built a new world outside the cage, and now it is about to export this AI stack to the world and take half the planet with them. And this insane story has three very, very important lessons for India. Lesson number one: if you're a weak nation with no scientists and no engineers, a sanction could cripple you. But if you're a strong nation with world-class engineers and scientists, the same sanction will act as a vaccine and give you a superpower. Number two, when national survival is put over profits, a revolution will emerge. In this case, while America was fighting for quarterly profits and the stock price game, China was, is, and will keep fighting for national survival. And lastly, in any resource-heavy game, the one who controls energy will always have a huge upper hand over others. Today, China roughly generates 5 times more electricity than India. In fact, China produces more electricity than US, India, and EU combined. So the question is, how is India going to cope up? That is a question that we need to ask our leaders. I will leave you with that thought. That's all from my side for today, guys. If you learned something valuable in this case study, please hit the like button to make YouTube happy. And for more such insightful business and political case studies, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.